I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book, and we're up to our entire interview with Phil Gould, the former drummer of Level 42. He was with the band during their heyday, left in 1987, then came back in 93 and 94, and then again in 2004. There was some bad blood between him and Mark King in the band, who's the lead singer and the bass player. He talks about all that, including the hits, because remember, as mentioned, he was with Level 42 for their heyday. World Machine and Running in the Family, Something About You, Lessons in Love. We talk about that and a lot more with Phil Gould, one of my favorite drummers, on Rock History Book. There's, did you see that? You must have seen the drum teacher reacts to Phil Gould. Did you see that video?
I saw something. Yeah, I think I did see something. Yeah, and he's quite. Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
he was he was very impressed.
When I look at my chops, then it was like I'm completely self-taught. You know, so I had no understanding of molar systems or anything like that. So I could see that I was arriving at certain things in I was quite tense in my body, and I just kind of. I sort of forced it out, Later, after seeing drummers like Omar Hakim live, I suddenly realized, hang about, he's doing an awful lot of, there's an awful lot going on in the movement of the stick without it being like this, So I began to change around the age of 26, 27 when I saw drummers like that. But in that phase, I think it was like 83, I was still pushing. I was pushing the drums away from me. But you arrive at I grew up in the Isle of Wight, a little seaside town. You arrive at these things however you arrive at these things, I was just talking to a friend of mine online about the very sad passing of Paul Jackson the other day, because what a seminal figure he was in our teenage lives, like Mark, myself, and my brother. And I had this wonderful friend I spent the winter when I was 17, I think 74, 75, a long time ago. And I would go, in the seaside, there's something, few things match the sort of the quiet desolation of an English seaside town at a season, where there's nothing going on. The rain is coming in, but there's also a kind of poetic beauty about it, because obviously the opposite of that is a summer where it's crazy. So a lot of my friends had hotels that were out, closed during the off season, and that winter when I was 17, I was going to this one particular friend, and he was dropping these bombs on me every week: Headhunters, Sweet Nighter, Icing the Body Electric, Todd Rundgren, Miles Davis in A Silent Way, Live Evil, Bitches Brew, and it was like mind blowing. And so every Sunday I go back to my town along the cliff path, kind of like this. And like one day he played Thrust by Herbie Hancock, and dun, 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 and that first bass line that I heard of Paul Jackson was like, was one of those electric shocks. It's great. That's the wonderful thing about music when you get into it. You have a series of electric shocks where you hear something just completely just opens your mind, and so it was kind of a funk-starved environment, the Isle of Wight. I think my friend Bill Burns, his name, was probably the only person on the Isle of Wight at that time to have Thrust by Herbie Hancock. So
the new video, love the new video. So I'd heard in the interview you just did that's a short film.
Well, the idea was I'm working with these lovely people in Vienna. The idea was to make a video, but also to do it in a conceptual way, like as if it was a short movie. So that piece of footage has a life now, as being entered in short film festivals around the world. We, the label, that we don't have the huge budgets to do a video like that for every song, but we'll do another one for the fourth single, I think. But the idea is, I love that idea that you can generate, kind of a visual form and then has a life of its own. It's not just it's very hard to monetize a video for somebody in my position, but if it goes into short film festivals around the world, then it has a life. And it's actually won a bit of love. It's got, I think, Best Director for Sarah in the Venice Film Festival, and it's been finalist in a few. So I really love engaging with that world, So we hope to, I'm looking for arts funding for some other things that I'd like to do with her. But it was a beautiful day. I mean, I love Vienna. I wanted to move to Vienna until the pandemic hit. And Sarah Shearer, her name is part of this incredible artistic community, where she just called all these people in for the day, and her ex-drama teacher. There's one of the guys in the last shot, one of the older people. There's one guy with a beard. He's the son of a Nobel Prize winning physicist from Switzerland. All these incredible people I'm talking to. And we just let her run with the narrative to do what she wanted to do, how she heard the song. And it was just beautiful. I just love that. I think one of the great things about getting older for me is to have less controlling instincts and less kind of like, you've got to be like this, got to be like that, just to allow things to happen. And a lot of the music on this project was made like that. I would somebody, could you come and have a, it's going to play on this track? And so what do you think then? And they would just do something. And I go, yeah, brilliant, rather than say, you need to play this, because I may have done that in my 20s a little bit,
I was reading on Captain Beefheart the other day, and I was kind of curious because one of those artists that I first started with Zappa, and then I went across and the stuff they'd done together, and I was interested with him. I didn't realize that he was one of those guys that really had tight rein on the musicians who played with him.
Yeah,
he kind of told them what to do, and I remember thinking, I mean, that goes against the creative spirit for me. But again, many great albums were made by someone saying, no, I want to put that way. It's the way it goes.
I think it was almost like an orchestral composer, Zappa. He was a rock musician, but he was really coming at it from that way that he wrote everything out, scored it like for an orchestra. But it was his orchestra was, Napoleon and Ruth Underwood and Chester Thompson, So it was all written out. There was the ultimate control freak, but in a really good way. I love what he did, and I was absolutely huge fan of Ruth Underwood, one of the greatest percussionists of all time. And it's incredible how she just, I think, got stopped at the beginning of the 80s or something. She just got to a point and just stopped doing it, which is, it's just crazy. She didn't carry on. So what she did with Zappa was really, that was what she did, and then she just left it and became a mum and has a very. And it's amazing, isn't it? You can be that gifted, but she just turned away from it. But anyway, that was an incredible band. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be in a situation like that, because the only way I function as a musician is if I can sort of find a way to create my own thing within a certain context. And it's a bit, I've often thought the analogy of the Sundance Kid is quite interesting. This in that film, Butch Cassidy, like there's a moment where he's been asked to shoot to prove he can shoot, and he's asked to hold the gun out in front of him, and he just can't hit anything, And then he just says to the guy who runs the sort of the money thing, he's saying, can I move? And he said, what do you mean? Can I move? And so he puts the gun back in the holster and does that, kind of like moves, and he hits everything. If he does it his way, it works, If he does it a way that he, that's, and I feel like I'm like that as a musician. I can only do it the way my instincts tell me to do it. If you tell me to do it in the style of so-and-so or something like that, my brain just fries, so I couldn't ever do a Zappa gig, I don't think.
So what was the deal with the dark glasses? You had the shades a lot back then.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I started wearing them as I was 16, when I was working in this factory, trying to pay my drum kit off.
So it was your thing. That's just your thing.
Yeah, and I just started wearing dark shades, and maybe by the end of my 20s, I was probably hiding at that point, because I was really upset with a little bit of the commerciality that was going on. I didn't want to talk to people about it. But I wore glasses, shades from age of 16, and I probably, when I left the band at 30, then I stopped doing it because I realized I was messing my eyes up, But I still have boxes of shades in the drawers over there, all different National Health John Lennon type lenses with blue, green, red, whatever it is.
Something About You is probably one of my all-time favorite videos. How long was that shoot?
I don't know, actually. It might have been a 2-day shoot, because I was a bit annoyed because Mike was in a church. We were on this train together. Mark was all over it, and my brother was in some kind of really weird country house driving this. What was he driving? That American sports car.
A Spider?
No, it was the guy. That film, Le Mans versus Ferrari.
Oh yeah.
Film we've had out. The guy. Oh God, my brain's gone. But anyway, he's driving that American sports car, and I thought that was a really good deal. He had Sherry Lungi in his car, and he was messing around. I was stuck in some little art studio in Fulham, with a staple gun, But it was kind of a wild moment, because obviously they knew something. They knew they had something, and they had to pull out the stops with it. This was the big video era of '85, yeah. So it was a couple of days, but I know the label knew they had something. That was in the summer, and the single came out in the autumn. But it was interesting the way the single became a success, because I think it went in at 38. They went to 36 and stayed at 36, and then went to 28, and then went up the charts very slowly. It just peaked at 6 in the UK, but it was like hanging by a thread for a couple of weeks, and then it became a genuine hit. And the days of videos, I really didn't like doing that video, because I was called upon to act, and I'm not an actor, and it looks terrible to this day. I think Mark did very well with the clown suit. I think he kind of got into it, you know.
I remember thinking that there's something movie-esque. Well, Sherry being in there. What was she like? Was it? Did you guys?
Lovely,
how would she end up in the video? How did that happen?
Well, they, you know, the label. I mean, whoever directed the video or came up with the concept hired her. You know, so she'd just come off the Mission, I think, with Robert De Niro. So she was like a RADA trained, proper Shakespearean actress. Yeah. Just having worked with Robert De Niro, and I was being asked to improvise dialogue, you know, in these scenes, because she was supposed to be my my patron as an artist, and she'd screwed up by not getting me a show, and I was supposed to get really angry and throw my staple gun down and come up with these lines. Can you imagine how embarrassing that is, to be working with a Shakespearean actress and trying to act, you know, for the first time in your life? But anyway, she was really lovely, and it was really good fun to do it in the end.
Why did you leave?
Well, I had some issues in terms of trust with my bandmates, and you know, because it's very difficult to explain the whole thing, so it's boring anyway. But I just felt like I had certain things that weren't right. It was and things that I couldn't. It made me feel like I couldn't trust the people I was with, and that made it very hard for me. But then we got to the end of the year. It was so successful at this point that we then just sat down and then we should keep going, you know. But I think really my time was over by that point. But I kept going for another couple of years, you know, running the family. The album that's called The Following Year was very successful. It has a couple of good songs on it, but the way it was recorded was kind of like formulaic, based on something about you. So if you listen to Lessons in Love, it's got the amazing guitar parts of my brother, but it's basically the same kind of vibe in the structure as Something About You, because we'd hit upon a formula. And I don't work like that. I can't function like that. You know, I really don't like that attitude to music. So I knew my time was up, but I saw out the project and I left at the end of the following year, you know, after the tour.
What was the reaction when you said you were leaving? Were they surprised or not surprised?
They weren't surprised. And at that point, we had a very kind of interesting management situation, divide and rule kind of vibe. So it was kind of, I don't think that, you know, I don't think people cared too much, really. I think it was just seen as being difficult. I thought the label thought I was being difficult. I remember like having an argument with the label on the artwork, because there was an album called World Machine, and there was a track called A Physical Presence. So I gave them all the titles, and here's all the titles of the credits. And when they showed me the sleeve, it said Physical Presence, and I said, well, the song's called A Physical Presence, and that's what we sing. A physical presence. Why have you dropped the A? Well, you don't need that. And I said, that's not your decision to make. And then they go like, why are you being difficult? Like, so I had this reputation of being like a bit difficult. Maybe I was, I don't know. But like I was trying to maintain standards and like also maintain, I was saying, well, I don't expect you to sort of come up to modify titles. And I know it sounds a bit petty now, but it was just like that. There was a perception in the band that I was the tricky one or the arty one. And perhaps that may have been true, but the bottom line is all the album titles and concepts came from me, and most of the I'd co-written 8 of the 9 songs on the World Machine, so I thought I had a stake in it, but the label had other ideas, you know.
You had such a big writing presence on World Machine. I mean, that's the one that I paid attention to the most. But I when I'm looking at who wrote those songs, you were all over the place.
Yeah, me and Mark used to write some stuff together on every album. There probably 1 or 2 things where we sat down and wrote together, which I loved. You know, I mean, I think there was 3 tunes like that on the 3rd album. I think there's a track. I think "Good Man and Storm," "Coup d'Etat," "A Physical Presence." The song me and Mark wrote, the 2 of us. You know, and I love that connection. We had an amazing connection. So I think there's a track called "A Good Man and a Storm" on World Machine, which I'm really proud of, because
that is beautiful. That is haunting.
Yeah. Well, it's like me. I've got like A and I'm going to D, and he's got this riff he's building up, and then he did this B section. Then I had this hymn, da 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 da, and it was all out of time, like a hymn. And then we just put it in time, da ba ba da 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 da. Yeah. And it's like, wow, that sounds really cool, Mark. You know, and it's just like one of those things that we were so opposite, but when we worked together on certain things, there was just a beautiful blend, and when we could get past ourselves, you know, we could do some lovely things together. But unfortunately, there was a lot of ego and dynamic and sort of also monetary concerns and things like that. It was kind of a shame. But I think, I remember talking to Ken Scott about this, who produced our 4th album, that you know, some bands have a lifespan, you know, like Missing Persons, this band he did with who's that astonishing drummer? Christ, that he played with Zappa. My brain's gone today.
He was in UK, Terry Bozzio.
Terry Bozzio, yeah. But they looked set for like huge things. They did one album, sold 800,000 copies, and then disintegrated, you know. And like we did 7 studio albums and a live album. And Ken said, "I think you did all right," you know. And I was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, that's the way to look at it." And I'm more than grateful now that we did what we did. It's a shame because the one thing I do miss is that relationship with Mark as a writer. You know, the two of us, just in those lovely moments where I've got this bit, have you got that bit, you know, and you know, I remember he might have a great sequence. I put a top line on it. I might have a sequence. He put a top line on it, and it's kind of like that connection you have to musicians is so rare, and it's very special when you find it. And it's probably, I work with some wonderful musicians since, of course, but that particular connection is probably unlikely I'll ever have anything like that again. You know, I don't think that comes along very often in your life, that kind of thing.
You came back for Forever Now.
Yeah, I mean, I got a call to do this album, and it wasn't the best situation for them. But why I went back was to heal the wounds, you know. And I'd actually just written a song with Steve White, and it was called "Love in a Peaceful World." And the first verse went, "You came from out of nowhere yesterday. You blew my mind. You blew my cool, but that's okay. I know I couldn't run forever anyway. I knew I'd have to face the truth someday." It's like, but I got the call from Mark the following day. It's almost like but I knew that, like, by working together, we could iron out some of those things that had happened, and that's what we did. But the band, kind of, with the label they were on at the time, had run its course. I mean, the label really weren't behind the band at that point, RCA. So it was like, forget it. But at least it was a good chance to work together and to talk some things through and put it to bed. And it was great. We did that. I think what we should have done was get my brother involved and get Wally involved. Well, Wally was involved, but we should have actually sat down and done it in a more structured way. But it was a really nice time working with Mark again. It was great. That was probably about 5 years after I'd left that I did that, 92. I think we finished the album 93, something like that.
Would you ever go back if you were asked?
No, not with, I mean, Mark, you know, Level 42, whatever they are now, they're an entity unto themselves. You know, they're a whole band. They've got great musicians. They do their thing. And, you know, I think I would like to see them put out music. Actually, I'd like Mark to sit down with Wally and write another album or something. You know, obviously my brother is no longer with us, but he can't. So he was the lyricist after I left, and he was the lyricist for many things while I was in the band. But like, it's a shame that they don't put out more music. But I'm so grateful that they're still playing that music. They had the 40th anniversary tour cancelled last year, but they'll do that this year. But I want to work with Mike. Wally's all over my album, and the new single he's on, which is. He's one of the most singular musicians you'll come across. And so I'm grateful that I still have these guys in my life, you know.
Well, speaking of Wally, working with him, I remember when I was doing light jazz, before they called it smooth jazz, we were playing actual jazz musicians along with what became smooth jazz. It was a nice mix. I was playing some of Wally's earlier stuff. And what was it like working with him?
Oh, it was a great experience. I mean, I met him on the M session, the first recording session I did for this studio project by Robin Scott. And I was talking to Robin the other day, actually, because I'm writing a piece about the day I met David Bowie when I was in the studio. We were recording at Mountain Studios in Montreux, and I met Wally doing the TVs, and then we went to Montreux to record. But it was one of the greatest strokes of luck of my life, because it was such only a couple of years before, Wally was a law student, you know. He'd only started playing keyboards at the age of 18. But all of a sudden, I think he did a few sessions, and after he did some sessions in Paris, strangely enough, he was going into sessions in Paris because his brother was a bass player, and he was just playing any old keyboards lying around. And he kept doing these really cool parts, so he kept getting asked back. So he actually became a musician via doing sessions, and then bought his first keyboard with the money he made doing sessions. I think his first keyboard was a Korg Polyphonic, which I have right here, and ensemble. But he was so inventive. He was so intelligent and so original. And to this day, like the new single, The Dance, if you listen to these keyboards on that, it's nobody else can do anything like that, you know. And now he does it all on a laptop. In those days, it would be a Prophet 5, a Korg Polyphonic, a Mini Moog. But yeah, I was so lucky to meet him. And then as Level 42 emerged out of those M sessions, actually, because Mark did the second album with me and Wally, then Level 42, we went forward with Wally because he was just so unique a musician. At that time, he was doing Grace Jones, Talking Heads, later on Foreigner, Robert Palmer. You know, he just exploded in the early 80s. And I think his sound as a keyboard player was really influential in a way that people don't realize now. Like if you go back and listen to The Message by Grandmaster Flash, that Prophet sound, that's all Wally, man. You know, that's Wally Badarou that's on like Pull Up to the Bumper, you know, on with Grace Jones, you know. And what he was having a huge impact on the keyboard players in that world. They were listening to what he was doing, and he was our guy. He was on our records. It was amazing. You know, it was incredible to have him.
Color of My Pain. That's Mike on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
haunting. Yeah, that's haunting and beautiful.
Thank you, man. Yeah, that came out of a piano ostinato, a bit like actually this new single, The Dance. It started life as a piano ostinato, and I just find these patterns, and I just love that pattern. And then my friend said you should write a song with that. And he started Al Slavic's amazing bass player, friend of mine, lives in LA now, but we were just fiddling around together, and he said he started singing a chorus idea, and then I ran with it. But it wasn't supposed to be a song. But it's just that's the thing about music. The way I approach it is because I've always thought of music in a fairly linear way. You know, when I was going through this this phase, which I'm going to continue to go through with the Jethro Tull phase, listen to what, like say, Thick as a Brick, and the journey that music takes. I mean, the musical journey those songs take, even like earlier Jethro Tull stuff, Which Is Promise, and I mean, there's a musical journey. I think there's one song on the album that's a bit like that, but I'm more linear. I came through the whole Talking Heads, Remaining Light, you know, funk, you know, Donald Byrd, Blackbird, kind of funk groove stuff. So my songwriting tends to be a bit towards that, where it's linear. So I love the thing about Color of My Pain. Actually, it was written during at the end of a very difficult period of my life. It's divorce and things like that, and so it's kind of. It literally is the color of my pain. You know, but what the hell? You have to write about something, right? You know, has to come from somewhere.
Your kids were born after you left Level 42, but do they get what you accomplished?
Well, I had a son. I was 20. I was 21 when I became a parent. You know, as a student for the first time. So my eldest son is actually born before that happened, and my other two children were born after it happened. You know. But actually, funny because my friend Paul Waller, this incredible designer who's doing all the graphics for me, he's just put together this box set. Shameless plug. It's a Level 42 box set, and it's basically they found the original masters for the first 4 albums, and he's recreated all this artwork. So now I'm going to get like a copy each from my kids with all the original albums plus you get all the outtake nonsense at the end, but you get the 4 original albums plus I think up to World Machine. I'm going to give them each one of these, and they have no excuse not to listen to this music. And I will ask them questions at the end of the year about what do you think of I Want Eyes. We've never had discussions about it. Honestly, I've never. I mean, the one thing that they get fed up with me is because you know I was a single parent for a while. Actually, my 2 youngest kids were within 5 years. And I'd be driving to school or taking them around. Of course, I've got backing tracks on in the car. You know, trying to think of melodies, you know, that's how I roll. And what they got really sick of were Color of My Pain. You know, I was listening, I had the riff and the backing track, and I was singing melodies and trying to think of things, and they got really sick of hearing it over and over and over again. But they never had that with Level 42, so I expect them to pay attention now to show some respect. Maybe they will. I think my daughter said to me the other day she's been going through a little bit of a Level 42 phase, but you can't be dictatorial about these things. They have to want to do it themselves, you know.
Okay, I ask everyone this question. I'm always curious. Let's say you're at a dentist's office. The guy turns around. He says, "So, what do you do?" How do you answer that? I mean, where do you start? What do you say?
Just musician, you know, just a musician.
But then he's going to say, "Have I heard anything you've done?" How do you approach that?
Well, just maybe I don't know. I mean, I try and deflect away from that, and then maybe, well, you know, I was in a band. What's the band? Okay, well, I was in this band one time, you know, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. I try and sort of, I can be quite successful in steering it away from that sometimes, you know. I mean, I used to, when I moved to the West Country in about 97, you know, we all, as a family, all went down there. I would find that quite embarrassing a little bit at dinner parties, you know, like, you know, meeting all these lovely people, because I I think once people know that you've been on the telly or something, or you've been in a band, then the conversation changes, and they laugh. People laugh longer at your jokes, and your jokes don't get any better. But and I was thinking, well, I just need to keep that quiet, so let's not talk about it. And it would always be almost like there was a shift in the room towards you because you've been in the band, like as if they thought that you expected that somehow. And let's not talk about it. It's not a problem, not an issue, because it's funny. It's about the life that you lead in that world. It's like when you go home to see your family or older friends. There's a whole series of things that the things that you live that have no resonance for people that don't live in that world. If I'm talking to you or other musicians, I can talk about all the experience I've had on the road and what happens in the studio. There's a lot of overlap, a lot of things that are thoughts and ideas that are generated from the experiences you have, but you can't really relate to that to somebody that stayed behind in Shanklin. You can't explain. And even if I would sort of say man or something, because hey man, it was like there would be like kind of this, what are you doing? So it's funny how you find yourself editing yourself. And having been by that time when I moved to the West Country, I'd been out of Level 42 for 10 years. So I found myself editing and deflecting to not be in those situations to talk about it, and it was kind of a weird state, almost like I was embarrassed or something. But it's crazy. It's just slightly is embarrassing that you have to. Oh yeah, well I was in the band and then I left. And why did you leave? Oh yeah, okay, let's just enjoy our dinner. I remember did a session about 20 years ago now in the West Country. Actually, I got a little studio together in Dorset, and I worked for this Italian guy. I mean, the producer is a very close friend of mine now, but this young Italian guy came over, and he was staying in this wonderful hotel. It's a little town called Wareham in Dorset. It's a little kind of Anglo-Saxon walled town, and he was coming over. He had a big stack of photographs of himself, and he was like, when we went out to the restaurant, he was signing them and giving them to the waiter. Again, my daughter, bless her, was only 5 at the time, I think, and he was sort of no, she was about 8, and he gave her a signed picture of himself, and she was looking at it going, what, this. But I just thought the presumption was extraordinary. Like no, but he was in Italy. He could have been the most famous musician in Italy, but nobody would have known about him in Dorset. I mean, so the idea that he's got this stack of pictures he's signing for everybody, and they don't even ask for it. I thought that was quite unbelievable level of presumption and ego. And I'm the polar opposite of that. I'm whatever the opposite of that is. I'm going to be just hiding. If somebody tries to sort of engage with my gaze will be over there somewhere.
Touring, what was the best experience for touring with some other band performer that you really thought, well, this is cool? I mean, who would that have been?
A supporting role kind of thing.
Well, either way, someone touring with you and just you feel you meet musicians all the time and you have a kinship with them, or else you don't have time to talk to them, or whatever it might be. But was there ever a moment where you went?
Well, I love the Stevie Winwood tour we did, the support tour we did in North America in '86, because the backing, his band were great, and we had a good reaction. We're getting a good vibe from the audience, and the venues were great. They sounded pretty cool. It wasn't these huge mega stadiums. He was sort of playing convention centers, 10, 20,000. He was playing huge venues, but not like giant stadium. It was a really good tour. We did a tour the following year with Madonna, which wasn't such a great audience for us, but that band was great to hang with. Louis Conte, John Moffat, Patrick Leonard, all those guys. Me and my brother, with Donna DeLore, all the backing singers, we were just barreling around New York, all these places in a limo with these guys and going to clubs and having this crazy time. It was brilliant fun. Incredible people. I don't think the Madonna tour did us any favors in terms of developing an audience, because it was a very different audience. But a Stevie Winwood tour was great because that there was some overlap between our approach, the quite rocky, but the '86 set was kind of quite hardcore compared to the much more poppy post Running the Family set, which is much more sequencer based, which is kind of why I really thought, my time's at an end now, because like the idea that we were good musicians, we had really good timing, and then a computer was dictating to you. So it was a little bit, I thought we were cheating the audience a little bit by doing that.
World Machine, what do you think it was, the vibe going into that album that broke you through in North America? I mean, I'm curious about the vibe going into World Machine and, the following and Run in the Family. what was the vibe going like? What was it like going into each one of those albums? Because obviously you left after the second one. Well, not the second, but
it's different. I mean, like with World Machine was difficult because when that winter between True Colors and when we were going to do World Machine, I actually went around to everybody's house and said, look, we can produce ourselves with Wally, with a great engineer. And I made this impassioned speech, but all we have to do is trust one another, you know. So I was quite shocked, having written 8 of the 9 tracks, and we were ready to record, that when Mark and Wally came upstairs and announced that when it came to mixing the album, only they and only those two and Julian Mendelson, the engineer, were going to be involved in the mix. And I was going, what are you talking about? I've been involved in every mix we've done. And I even stayed behind in LA in '83 when we did Standing in the Light. I was the only one that stayed behind for the mixing. But because Level 42 was a democracy, we took a vote. And of course, it's 4 against 1. The other, Mike and Boone went along with it. And that was the beginning of me being completely feeling betrayed, because I said we have to trust each other. Well, how can I not be trusted to be involved in the final stage of a production on 8? And I've written 8 of the 9 songs, yeah. And so it was a very difficult moment. So during the recording of that, I was really in a bad place. After we did the backing tracks, I just went to the Isle of Wight for a week to finish the lyrics. And then Mark thought that was a betrayal because he thought I'd walked away from the recording. I said to Wally, I'm just going to go and finish the lyrics. You guys get on with it. And then I went back and did some overdubs and things like that, and then they mixed it. But then it became very complicated, you know, because I really took umbrage at that, you know, and I felt it was really important to be in a situation, and there are things that happened before that where trust issues had arisen. And for me, I just lived my life like that, and I could have maybe swallowed it up, but it really affected me. And I'm one of those people. I'm sorry, but I just, you know, I mean, I'm glad I went back. I'm glad we had that successful period together, and we put that music out into the world. We headlined Glastonbury and all those things. Yeah. But I knew that I couldn't do any more than that, and I knew.
But let me interrupt you for a second. But you have success, and Running in the Family comes out after that. Was there ever a time between those 2 albums that you thought maybe I will leave at that point?
Yeah, there was. To be honest, all along I knew I wasn't going to stay very long, but I felt like, I suppose there was part of me was saying, well, this is my baby. I formed the flipping band. You know, I got the guys down to do the first independent single. So I just felt like I'm going to stay and enjoy the success and see where it goes. I thought things could get better. We had some amazing times throughout '86, culminating in the summer headlining Glastonbury, which is probably the best gig we ever did on the Sunday night. It was unbelievable. And very sad, obviously, what's happened to my family in recent years with the loss of my brother. But the one thing that came into my mind when the first thought that came into my mind when I heard that dreadful news was the day we did Glastonbury, and Bruno and I walked up the ramp on the Pyramid stage, having just watched England lose to Argentina in the World Cup with Maradona's Hand of God goal. And we were walking up stage arguing with each other, like cheating so-and-so, you know. And then we got to the top of the stage, you know, and they said, I'll see you later. You know, I went behind the drums and he went to the guitar, and we played the gig of our lives, you know, and it was just incredible because, you know, Level 42 weren't a band that was supposed to do well at Glastonbury. It was a counterculture festival then. It wasn't televised, and it was all kind of like, you know, quite underground things, you know, but we actually killed it, and it was just an incredible feeling. And then after that gig, we went and recorded Running the Family, and then it was kind of downhill after that. But yeah, it's a shame because it was to have that set at the time that we did in North America with Stevie Wonder with those songs like A Physical Presence, World Machine. It was just so great to play that stuff. So I'm glad I stayed because I got the opportunity to play that music around the world, and it was my music as much as anybody's. That was limited time I was on, borrowed time I was on.
I love the Physical Presence. I like the do 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 do. You know, I just love the way that song. That song is kind of like the do ba do ba do ba do. But it's just got kind of my shoulders always lower when I hear that song. There's just something about it. I just love that tune.
It's so cool. I had 4 rack toms at this point on the floor, and they were tuned in that kind of in a timpani style. Like the head is the top head. And it's in tune with itself, and it's in tune with the bottom of it. They're the same note, and that's quite. And they were open, you know. But we had the studio, an incredible engineer And so they were like playing notes. That do 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 do. It's a melody, you know. So it's a bit like those kind of melody intros that you hear. And I came up with that in rehearsals, and every take I did, I think we only did 3 takes actually, but every take I did, I start like that because I knew it was a motif. And in fact, actually, what happened after I left was that there was, I think, Radio 7 in Paris, Radio Set, used that fill as the intro was like the musical intro to the news bulletin on the hour, and apparently it was used for 6 years or something like that. That do 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 do. Here's your report, and it's like I didn't get a cent because it was like under 6 seconds.
Oh, is that how it worked?
Yeah, something like that at the time, like a sample under, I think, under 6 seconds. It was not considered melodic content because it was a drum loop, they said, but actually it was a melody. And Wally was telling me, hey, I keep hearing you on the radio. Oh my God. I remember having a row with my brother this in 2004, this summer, and I had this tune I was working on, and I just drove back home from his house, and I wrote these lyrics in about an hour and a half, and that the track is called All in the Day's Work. It's on Watertight, and like if you listen to the second verse, you could take back the words, but not that look on your face, and I feel my body aching, but it's not my pain. I'm talking about this argument, but I couch it in the sense of me and Julie, like a relationship, but I'm really talking about that situation of being in such a dark place with my brother at that point. I mean, we made up later, but it's just when you have a moment like that, when you hit the wall with somebody or in a situation, you can write that in an instant. Other times you're trying to struggling to figure out what to write about. But I came back at 1 a.m, I think, and just did that in an hour, because it was like so absolutely raw, and I didn't have to write it; it just wrote itself.
Leaving Me Now is another one. Tell me about. I love that song. I remember that being a single. Love that. I like the long version.
Yeah, I mean that was a melody of Mark's, and I remember thinking that's a great melody, and like I came up with these lyrics, but I think a lot of the lyrics were actually, I was in my mind when I think of that title, "Leaving Me Now." I mean, I'm kind of almost out the door at the moment, because when I went to the Isle of Wight to write those lyrics, I felt really disenfranchised because I felt betrayed or something, whatever I was feeling. So "Leaving Me Now," if you listen to some of those lyrics, like "I leave as I enter, another boy caught in between," I'm actually sort of putting, Mark, bless him, had this great sound as a singer, but he really didn't have a huge interpretive relationship to the lyrics. So I put these lyrics in front of him, and he would like look at them. Oh yeah, that's cool. It all scans really well, and sing 3 takes, and we'd edit the 3 takes, and it was all kind of very spontaneous. But I don't think he really looked at what I was actually putting in his mouth. Like some people. What's that line? Some people kill for less. I always gave my best. Your memory serves you so badly. It's like I'm really being sort of feeling sorry for myself at this point, or a good man in the storm. It just occurred to me I must be blind. Why do I try so hard to keep my cool and about to lose my mind, Mark? And yeah. Like people, so that's the conversation we were having. Is very odd, but you hear these situations. You hear this incredible story like of rumors, how they made rumors. And like this person separating that person, and that person having an affair with the drummer, and my God, how they made that record. But they're all singing to each other in their songs, like "You Can Go Your Own Way" or whatever. And I think sometimes, if you're in the middle of a messy situation, it actually provides an awful lot of real material that you can tap into. That maybe is a reason why it maybe has resonated with people as not something like. We weren't making it up. It was something we were going through, which I think is actually pretty cool in the end.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. What an interesting cat he is. Just a great drummer. He influenced me an awful lot. He was with Level 42 until 87, came back a few times after that. World Machine and Running in the Family, 2 of my favorite albums from the 80s. Level 42 really hasn't been the same without him, or his late brother, Gould. All the links are in the description. If you want to follow us, know more about us, support us, you can make a donation. The links are in the description. Join our Patreon, get early access to all our videos. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Again, all the links are in the description. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Book. Take care.